Hello, you're back with Mike Mason, Call of Cthulhu Creative Director at Chaosium, and Lynne Hardy, the Associate Line Editor for Call of Cthulhu. Hello, Lynne.
Hello.
Right, Lynne, I think we decided we were going to talk about what happens when your players ignore the clues, basically avoiding the plot. Is this something that you've experienced, perhaps?
Yes, every now and again. I mean, you know what players are like, bless them. You spend hours carefully creating your plot and setting all your clues in exactly where they need to be. And then the players will just spot some random shiny off in a corner or will read something, a handout, and leap to entirely the wrong conclusion, something that you honestly never ever thought of. And then they will just go wandering off, quite often in the entire opposite direction to where the plot and all your carefully crafted clues have been set up. So, I mean, one person very unkindly said, no plot survives encounter with the enemy, i.e. the players. I mean, players aren't your enemy, but, they can make life trying at times.
They can. I mean, I think most players, want to enjoy the game they're signed up to play, as it were, that they're putting their time in to do. And sometimes, just innocently, they don't realise they are kind of going astray of the plot. And that's fine. There are things, and we'll talk about those, I guess, in a minute, of how to kind of get things back on track. I think occasionally you do get, particularly when it's somebody who's maybe played a lot of other games and maybe this is the first time they're playing this, or they just decide that they're, I don't know, to be awkward, I think is the way to put it. That my character wouldn't do that, so I'm going to avoid that clue. I'm not going to go to here. I'm not going to do that. And they kind of disengage from the plot, and they use the excuse of, well, my character wouldn't do that. And I I get, well, as a player, do you want to play this game or not? I think is the retort. That clearly you are playing in it. You've seen the setup, you've seen why you've been brought in, and is there something? What do you want to do? And if what you want to do, is to play the game and maybe tackle the plot in a slightly different direction, maybe we can work that out, and that's cool. But if it's just no, well, I don't see any reason why my accountant would go there. I'm going to stay and do the accountancy. Well, that's fine, but you are willingly and knowingly taking yourself out of the plot. Now, there's a few things I can do to try and pull you back in the plot, and I will try and do that as a GM. But if you continue to kind of resist those and say no, no, I won't, when I'm called to come, I'll say no. When somebody knocks at my door with an urgent message to say, you need to bring the gasoline to such and such a house, I say no. Then you are blocking the plot. You're just blocking. And so to me, that, well, you're not helping the game, and you're not enjoying the game. I mean, you are doing yourself a disservice by not playing the game. Basically, you're not playing the game, and that's what it is at the end of a game. It isn't a realistic recreation of real life. It's a game, and you have to kind of make some leeway with that. So I think those kind of, that particular player, I think, maybe you need to take a break in the game and have a word and say, are you enjoying this? Is it not for you? If it's not for you, that's just fine. See you again. If it is for you and you just can't find a way to engage with it, let's have a quick chat about how to make it work for you and your character and get them into the plot. And sometimes they just need to be reminded, hey, come on, get on with it, and they go, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, I've had a bad day, I wasn't really thinking, or whatever it may be. Yep. But that out of the way, that proviso out of the way. Okay,
So one thing, before we move off that point, one thing I would like to add, which is the embarrassing story time, but it illustrates the point quite well, because of course we've all watched horror films. We've all yelled at the screen when the protagonist do something really stupid that you sit there calmly in your cinema going, no, I would never do that. I was once in a bathroom in a pub in Newcastle, and I flushed it, and the overflow pipe exploded. And this wall of water starts coming towards me, and I turn, try and get out the door before I get hit by this wall of overflow toilet water. And I'm desperately pushing the toilet door, despite the fact my brain is going, no, you pull it, you idiots. So, with the best will in the world, in stressful situations, people do really dumb things. So always bear that in mind for your characters. Yes, a calm, collected person might be going, why on earth would I go in there, that creepy, spooky old house where none of the lights work? In films, in real life, if you're desperate because it's raining, the weather's horrible, you've broken down, you need shelter, you will go and do something against your better judgment because it's kind of better than the situation you're in at the moment, or just because your brain isn't working properly and you just need to get out of the rain or go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean that's really true. Just to kind of echo that, is not everyone is a kind of calm, collected individual that weighs up all the pros and cons before they act. There are some people that like that, and there are some people that are risk takers. There are some people that don't see fear in that way, and they're just as valid as everyone else. I guess that comes more clearly out in terms of character design in Pulp Cthulhu, where you have the kind of different archetypes, where you have like a thrill seeker and a daredevil and so forth, as well as this kind of scientist and thinker kind of characters. So it's much more easy to kind of say, well, this is my style of character, so I think before I act. In classic Call of Cthulhu, that's more free form and there's less defined. It's for the player to kind of design their character and play it accordingly. But remember that I think you're right. Not everyone acts rationally when the chips are down. And sometimes that kind of doing things you kind of know is wrong, but you can't help it. Is what happens, and so that's fine to kind of play that way. Certainly, in terms of characters kind of missing the plot, what are your kind of tips or things that you do for when the characters have they've kind of maybe they've gone to a first couple of locations or interviewed a couple of NPCs or whatever, and for you it's really clear that they now need to go to the haunted house on the hill, but they are doing everything but that. They're now coming up with reasons why they need to go and go to the library again or go and talk to the police when there's no clues really leading to these places. What do you how do you kind of handle that?
Excuse me. There's a couple of different ways you can go for it. I mean, at the end of the day, if they are really faffing about, you might just have to take your time out and say, look, you have done everything. You have exhausted everything. The plot is over there. Kindly go and deal with it. You can give them int rolls to see if they can realise. There's the idea roll as well. If they're really struggling, obviously that has consequences for the characters. So I tend to prefer to use int, just so that they're sort of like something just dawns on them. The little light bulb goes on. It's like, oh, hang on. You can have an NPC go, oh, well, I'm just going up to the haunted house. If you don't hear from me in X,
I'll give you a call on my mobile when I get there.
Yeah, precisely.
Come quickly. Send more brains.
Or they can see that something's happening at the house, so hopefully it will attract their attention and they will then go and deal with it. I mean, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what's happening in the game and my reading of the table, my reading of where the players' minds are in terms of the game. Because often in the Call of Cthulhu game, the players' minds are, we don't know. We just don't know. The plot hasn't yet really kind of, all the clues haven't yet come into place. So you're trying to ensure that they're getting the clues they need to make that kind of conclusion. So sometimes it is a case of using an NPC to kind of maybe introduce a clue that the players have just missed. That they get an NPC they've already spoken to, recontact them in some way to say, oh, you know what, I completely forgot to mention this, and you've made me think about it, or I feel really guilty the way I treated you. Here's the box of things I didn't tell you I had. Which kind of leads them on. It could be something they see police cars going past. That's always a good attention grabber. Where are the police cars going? There's a big plume of smoke and something flying in the air above it. we need to go there. Whether it's, they may not know it's connected to the plot, but it obviously is. But you're directing them very visually through an action that's outside of their control. That kind of thing. A newspaper headline that an impromptu one you kind of make up on the spot that just kind of reflags there's something bad happening here, and maybe you should revisit something or head to where head to clue. The other thing is like maybe making an int roll or something and saying hey or just kind of that kind of keeperly advice you do sometimes during a game when there's a lull and you're saying so how are you getting on, how are you finding it, do you think you know what's going on yet, and that allows them to tell you their ideas out of character, and you can get a sense of whether they're kind of they are actually on track. It just doesn't feel like they are, but it also allows you as keeper to say you've got all those newspaper clippings, I know you went through them, but is it worth maybe looking at them again? And just a little aside like that sometimes is a big clue to say you missed something without saying you missed something.
Yeah, so I mean sometimes you can just do the whole, if it's something that they've mentioned but they've forgotten about, you can just do the whole, oh, you haven't looked at that yet, have you?
Yeah.
And just that sentence can just be enough to push them in the right direction as well. Which is, having clues that are movable if they miss them is also very handy. Having multiple ways that they can get at them really helps matters too.
So moving clues around. I know that some players don't like moving clues around. They prefer to. They feel they need to kind of stick to the written plot of the scenario, the written clue structure. I think what you have to realize is that when you write a scenario, you write it, with the best will in the world to try and accommodate as many groups as possible. So sometimes you try and make it as clear as possible in terms of where the clues are, but you can't anticipate every possible way this game is going to be played. It's a role-playing game. It's completely free form. Players can do anything technically, and so I can't divine where exactly the players will go, and I can't make the players go anywhere other than by dropping some, a breadcrumb trail. It's for the keeper to use the scenario as a toolkit to kind of create a story and to create a fun game for everyone around the table. So it is not breaking the game, and it is not wrong to move things around within the story that you are telling of that scenario, because it's your version of that scenario, not mine, because my version is the one I've written down, but your players may decide to not play it the way I thought you were going to play it. So I think just to sort of say that it's okay to move an NPC around, or to change a clue that was a newspaper clipping into something that comes out of an NPC's mouth, or vice versa. That's all fine. That's the nature of storytelling. Things adapt and change to make it, to make it fun and to make it, to make it work. So that's cool. So, but using you mentioned the idea roll. I mean, that is there. If the keeper can suggest it if the players are really stumped, and that's a surefire way of ensuring you are back on track. They make an idea roll, and whatever the outcome of that idea roll, they will advance the plot. It just means the circumstances of where you pick up the action is determined by the outcome. So if you fail the idea roll, you advance the plot, but you are in some sort of danger or some sort of threat or tension. You just move it to the fact that you are now inside the cultist lair, or the cave, the cave entrance where the monster lives, or whatever it may be. Maybe if you succeeded the roll, you know where it is because you've done your homework and you've got it on a plan in front of you around the table, and we go into a kind of a plan of so how are you going to tackle getting into this cultist house to steal this tome or artifact. So it's just the level of threat that changes by the outcome of the dice roll. So, but that is a surefire way of, moving things on if the players are kind of adrift, I guess. But you don't tend to use that a lot. You tend to use idea.
I tend to use int rather than idea, yeah. Just because it's personal preference. I mean, one of the other things that's interesting as well is there might be a reason why the players are going off and doing something, or their investigators are going off in a different direction. And sometimes it can be worth listening to them because they're trying to tell you what they're actually interested in. So this kind of brings us on to another topic we were going to maybe have a look at, which is winging it. And as Mike's already said, you don't have to stick chapter and verse to what's written in front of you if you're using a pre-written scenario. Don't be afraid of winging it. Listen to what your players are saying. If you can, and you feel confident enough, take the plot in that direction. Try and accommodate them, because they really are letting you know what's piqued their interest and what they want to pursue. And you can accommodate that within a game without wandering too far off the plot, as long as you are prepared to make a few things up. And nobody's going to know, nobody's going to mind. And as Mike has already said, it's your game. You do with it what you need to make sure everybody's having fun with it.
Yeah, sometimes you have a group of players and you meet, very regularly, and you're playing through a campaign of some kind. Some nights the players want to kind of be very cerebral. They want to investigate clues. They want to kind of put pieces of information together and debate and conjecture about, what is happening here and where should we go next and how should we tackle things. And that, we have a session that's very all talky, and that's cool. That's great. And other sessions, they all turn up and they've all had a long day at work and their brains aren't on full, are running on full tanks, and they just want to be honest, roll some dice and maybe, get into a fight and have a bit of action, a bit more drama in that sense. And that's fine too. It's a game, and and that's the way Call of Cthulhu works. It's a cerebral and an action game in that sense. So doing that and just going with it and saying, if you find that, you thought they were all going to go down the library tonight, but they're all sitting around talking about going down the speakeasy and just hanging out there in case something happens. Well, let them do it. And hey, not every fight has to be connected to the plot or the mythos. Can they not just run into some hoodlums or some gangsters or whatever and get into a bit of a scrape with them and basically form some kind of backstory, where there's some kind of they form some sort of relationship with this with some the local kind of crime lords or gangsters or whatever it is that really hasn't got a lot to do with the plot, and maybe that relationship will twist and change as you play through the campaign. It starts off as they're kind of enemies or enemies because of because somebody said the wrong thing or looked the wrong way or whatever, and so this kind of enmity starts. But actually that develops because you develop it. You start to bring these completely off the top of your head created NPCs in. You start to develop them as characters in the game, and maybe in time they are replacement player characters. They are sources of expertise for they need to get into a house. Or I remember that guy we had a fight with at the bar. Somebody told me he was a safe cracker. Maybe we should go back and convince him to come and do. You could make it work however you want. But that all started because the players wanted to kind of muck around and have a fight and not really play the plot that night. Well, bring that in and make it into the plot down the line. That kind of thing is just know your table. Read the table and try and go with the players where you can, to at the end of the day make it fun for everyone around the table, including yourself. I guess would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a skill. It's a skill that needs practice. So don't be afraid if you're not perfect at it to start with, because it comes with experience. You'll get there. It's easier to do, obviously, with a group that that you're familiar with, because you can, to a certain extent, guess what they're going to do, see where they might go, tailor things to their particular taste. It's harder if you're running for a bunch of strangers, but again, that's something that will come with time and experience until you get to the point where actually you really quite enjoy not knowing what people are going to throw at you, because it keeps you on your toes and helps you develop your skills as a keeper and as a player if you're in a group with strangers.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're always learning, and every game, every bunch of new players you play with, there's always something to get out of it in that way. That's why I like it. It's always good fun. So there you are. So thanks, Lynne. Thanks for that. and
Thank you.
we'll see you all again soon. Bye bye for now.
Bye bye.